All right.
We're doing it live.
Good.
That's it.
As Canute would say, fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it live.
How you
Oh, I'm
doing,
sorry,
Izzy?
Lauren. You know what? I'm absolutely exhausted and super excited.
Well, good to see you again. Good to see you again after Riga, where we recently bumped into each other. Miami in man, that was May, wasn't it? That we were in Miami.
Yeah, I've got my Miami shirt on, actually.
Aha, look at that. All right. And
Yes.
then before that, Riga last
And
year is where it all started. And we'll get into that journey actually in a little bit. But first of all, Lauren wanted to fire the first question at you.
Hi.
well, before you
Sorry.
fire away, Lauren,
Mhm.
I owe sats for a steak to your father, and I don't have an address yet to send those sats. Can you please force him? It'll never happen, but can you try?
I will try. I will try.
I'm so excited to have this question. I've got a question for you as well.
All
I've
right.
got two
Well,
questions for you, actually.
two questions. Okay, now that may be a bit
Yes,
scary.
ma'am.
Okay. So when we were in Riga, you were talking about how you took over a company. And my question is, why would you take over a company, and how's it going now?
That's a really great question. Why would I take over a company? Because a really close friend of mine talked to me about it for months on end, and I was giving him information about the way that I thought the company should go. And he said to me, Wizard of Oz said to me, Izzy, I think you should. I think you should run this company. That's a very bad impression of Wizard of Oz. I'm sorry if he's listening to this. And Lauren, I think I secretly wanted to. It just was what my friend calls Satoshi synchronicity. And what was the second part of the question?
And how is it
And
going
how's it
now?
going?
Yeah.
Do you want the long answer, the short answer, the medium answer? You want the
Go with
short
any
one, don't you?
answer.
You want to bounce. You
No,
want any answer?
no. Any answer is good.
I'll tell you exactly how it's going. It
Okay.
started really rough because the founder had to leave the company, and I came in and it was dire straits. You know dire straits, not the band. Do you know the term dire straits? It was in
No.
bad shape, Lauren.
Oh,
It was hurting. And since that time, we've 7x'd in 5 months, which means 700% increase in our volume. Yeah, that's the look you should have right there. Those eyebrows going up and really excited. That's how me and the team get every day. We're like, let's go. Let's keep. So we're doing really, really, really well.
that's great.
Thank you. You want my questions?
Yeah.
First, how's your podcast?
Wait, which podcast? This one or the other one?
How many do you have?
Well, I'm doing
This,
another one for my
the other
school.
one.
So,
Yeah, that's the one.
yeah, that one. It's going, yeah. I've interviewed three people, which was the amount that he said that you should get comfortable with. But since my laptop is kind of oldish, we can't download any editing apps to edit it. So I have to email my the I guess you could say principal of my school so then he could try and edit it, and I don't think he's seen them yet, so it's going yeah.
That's what I should have said. How's the company going? Yeah, yeah, it's going all right. Are you enjoying it though?
Yeah, I think it's fun. They're only 20 minutes, and yeah, I like it.
Okay, I've got another question, but I've got a statement as well. Daniel, can you just let me and Lauren? We'll just have this podcast for the next
Go
couple
for
of
it.
hours. We can literally do this. I could do this with you forever. So I want to tell you something, but I want to ask you something as well. So a year and a half ago, I had sort of stayed in the Bitcoin closet for a very, very long time. And I started listening to podcasts in the pandemic, and I heard you and your dad, and I would sit there and I would think, this is before I knew your father, and I would just think, wow, that's so cool that they're able to do that together. And secretly, I think I had times where I was like, I'm going to have a conversation with Lauren. She's going to ask me a question. I'm going to ask her a question. So this is more exciting having this dialogue with you than maybe having it with your dad. You know that?
Thank you so much.
My second question for you is, so you've had the opportunity, like I've seen you in so many places now, like you're this incredible world traveler. Out of all the places that you guys have been and that you've lived, what's your favorite and why?
My favorite place to live? Since I was little, I couldn't really remember anything because I was 3 when we started getting up traveling. I have many memories, but not as much as I want the amount of memories because there's so much that went on that I can't remember, which is a bit sad. So, I think France. France is the only place that I've lived for the most amount of time of my life. And sorry, what was the other question?
I think you kind of answered it. It was
Oh,
why as well. Yeah. And your brother and sister said something very similar about France, like really enjoying being in France.
yeah, France is a lovely place. It's just homeschooling is a bit hard, so.
Mm.
Mm.
Try to go back to the 70s. It was a bit hard as well. They used to spank us. It was not fun.
Oh my God.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right?
I can't believe some people would be able to do that.
Yeah, different era. It's
Mm.
you I think your mom and dad made the most audacious and beautiful choices to take you guys and travel around the world and homeschool you and things. Although it may seem kind of a bit crazy sometimes. I would imagine if you were sitting in a classroom being indoctrinated into some craziness, it might seem even a little bit crazier. So I just, yeah, wish you all the blessings for that.
Thank you. Thank you
You
so
can always call Uncle Izzy and be like,
much.
no problem.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Lauren, for your questions. Do you want
Thank
to say
you.
goodbye to Izzy?
Bye, Izzy. Bye, Uncle Izzy.
Bye, Lauren. It was really good to see you. Oh my God. Let me just find that box and I will tick that box off because that is amazing. I meant what
Thanks,
I
mate.
said when I saw you, and you brought Lauren on, and I was watching a lot of your earlier podcast. I just thought this guy's a super dad. Like that is really, really cool thing to do.
Thank you. And like, here's the crazy thing, right? That's the natural thing to do. That's how far we have fallen from like familial practices and bowing to authority. When she asked one day, it was Andy Edstrom, I think it was about episode 7 or 8 on the Once Bitten podcast. And things in the house had changed, right? We were all locked down and whatever else. And now dad is like eating his dinner as quickly as possible because he's got a podcast coming up and he's disappearing off into another room and he's got some recording equipment. And like, what the hell? Who is this guy anymore? Like, and so when she turned around and said, "Can I come in and ask some questions as well?" The general response would be, well, no, honey, this is important. This is daddy's work. So everybody must stay outside and stay off the internet and stay off the Wi-Fi and be quiet. Just go watch some films or something. So I've got an hour and a half to go and do this. Or no, it's bedtime for you. The more likely it's bedtime for you, right? Because it was 9 o'clock, I think, in the evening because Andy's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
That's what people now just do naturally. Uh, and that's wrong. That's been inverted. Like the natural thing to do is, yes, of course, come on in. Let's go and have a chat
Mm,
with this person. But that took a lot of self-exploration and getting ourselves out of the indoctrination camps and de-schooling our own minds. And it's not easy. It's we still trip up every now and then because you are constantly pissing into the wind with this kind of stuff.
mm.
As you go against the grain on anything, and people are ready to stand and point at you. So yeah, it's always tough. But Yeah, getting to meet you a year and a half ago in Riga was amazing, and you had that little gift
Wait,
for Lauren as well.
I want to unpack something you just said before we
Yep.
segue in, because you said some really, really interesting things there. Yeah, one thing you said, Daniel, was pissing in the wind. I imagine as a parent, it's incredibly challenging because everyone else, well, not I presume everyone, but the majority of people that you're in contact with, they are in that indoctrination system. And so then with a young person, pardon me, with a young person, with a few of them, they don't know what you know yet. So they may not understand, like, well, why aren't we doing that, Dad? Why am I not eating sugars and chocolates, and why am I not going to school and learning these things? So kudos to you for really taking that chance. I've had the opportunity to meet almost all of your, it's hard to say children because they're so well adapt to hang out with adults, but they are children. I've had the opportunity to meet them, and they're just, I've said this to other people, they're incredibly well-rounded, incredibly polite, and just really wonderful. And the other thing you said was about, that's what we should be doing, like bringing her in. So if we look back to a lot of the indigenous cultures, I'm sure you know this, that's how they taught. The children came with them and they learned vicariously through what they were doing, whether that was hunting, or whether that was, you move forward in history, it's blacksmithing. There was not this type of indoctrination system that showed up.
No, 100%, mate. And for those people that want to learn more about that, if they hit up, I did a podcast with the author of Free to Learn with Peter Gray, and
Wow.
he he's an academic, and his son at the age of 11 was rebelling so hard about going to school because he knew it was not right for him, and he felt as though he was just being imprisoned, and with authority just completely hanging over him the whole time. And he sat in a meeting with Peter's wife, and the school, I think psychologist and headmaster or mistress, I can't remember the exact people that were in the room, but he turned around and told all of them to go to hell. And that was the
Wow.
moment, that was the moment Peter realized, whoa, like this is more than playing up at school and not getting the grades. And he's a child psychologist, right, or a psychologist by practice. So he got deep into the weeds of it, and then he wrote the book Free to Learn after learning all about indigenous tribes and how kids are brought into what's the saying? It takes a village to raise a child. Um,
Yeah.
Nowadays, people would be so scared of that. Like, no way in the world,
Yeah.
because we've all been so divided over the decades by the nefarious characters and governments around the world that do that purposefully to keep us separated from each other, not trusting each other, and
Mm.
making it easier to control us through pulling the levers of constant fear. So when you have that unit back and you can trust the people around you, and I can, when we go to the conferences, for example, these are perfect little um like almost little somebody said to me the other day, we're cosplaying citadels. It was Yoni said that. He said, it's our own little long weekend cosplay of what a citadel might look like, or what an extended community might look like. And
It's
I was thinking,
true.
damn, you're so right there, because I get into those arenas and I get pulled left and right and all over the place, and so do the kids.
Mm.
I don't see the kids for most of the day, but I know they're safe, and I know they're going to be having the most incredibly deep conversations or moments of clarity with other adults, because there's usually not many other kids around. Although in Riga, Avi and his wife brought their son,
Ah,
Ishan. He was 13, and
Ishama's lovely.
yeah, so it was great to see more kids coming. So, and this is what I'm really bullish about Bitcoin, and what you see it changing society right there. If that's a
Hmm.
little societal experiment inside one of these conferences, you come out and damn, like the come down afterwards is pretty tough, right? As soon as you're back in Formuland, in the security line at the airport, you're like, oh, really? Back to this? Like, why can't we all be like that? Why can't people who have never met each other before, how is it that they are able to come together and have some of the most incredible conversations and sit there and
Mm.
talk to each other for an hour and a half? And that's, I know I shield conferences, and I really do want to make sure people get there and experience that, because you and I experienced it over the last couple of years.
Changed my life.
Right, right. Change your life in so many
Yep.
ways. You know,
Yep.
it's so let's figure out why, because there's a great story behind this. Because if we wind it all the way back, you've had an incredibly colorful life. You've led
Yeah,
many
I have.
many different past fiat lives, and you've got a great Bitcoin rabbit hole story in there as well, and you've got some um some dark periods that you were trying to deal with, and then leading up to bam, coming out like Wiz, bringing you along on a bit of a world tour to meet other Bitcoiners. uh Whoa, like that. Yeah. All right, let's
Yeah.
start there. How did that change your life? Just going to BitBlock Boom, Riga, Isle of Man last year when Wiz took you on a little tour along with him. Um, why why did he feel that was necessary for you, firstly?
I would like to ask him that. I do find he is one of the most giving men. Keeps everything under the radar. But he just does a lot for Bitcoiners. And knowing him as well as I do, he does a lot of stuff that people don't know about. So I don't know what it was. I mean, probably the second person I ever reached out to on Twitter was Gigi when he was putting his book together. And that was during the pandemic. And we can get into why I did that. Well, I mentioned it the other day on Knut's podcast. It upset me greatly, um, because I saw what the world was doing. I had been talking about that shit for years, and I saw it roll out right in front of my face. And the majority of people here, at least in Australia, were like, well, let's step up, let's do the right thing. And I'm like, what's the right thing? You're going to trust your government right now for the first time, knowing that even yourself have talked about how many times they've lied to you, but it was fear. It was just out and out fear. You remember those videos from China, people collapsing in the street, and people were literally afraid. They didn't want to step out of line. They wanted to do the right thing. I got very upset. I wanted to fight, and it was I actually had the best experience ever because I got locked down, and I bounced from the city, went to a kind of a rural, somewhat of a rural property, hung out with a guy named from Germany who got stuck here, and we had the best experience ever. We were sparring in martial arts every day. But as I said to Knut, I saw so many people suffering, and I saw the state do things that to me was like, there it is, that's the beginning. And I saw so many people acquiesce. So coming sort of midway through that, I wanted to go on the street and be a part of the protest and really battle. And I remember speaking to my mother during that period, and she's always been the coolest person for me. Just really being able to weigh up things and help me sort of make decisions. I can't remember a time that she's ever said, you, except for when I was young, you have to do this. It's always been, well, let's look at it and find out what the balance is, what the consequences are. And she said to me during that time, choose your battles. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay. I reached out to Gigi because I wanted to do something in Bitcoin. I've come in and out of the Bitcoin space as somewhat of a stalker, if you will, for a very long time. And I just wanted to connect. It was actually, I was trying to orange pill the guy from Germany and I was failing. And I went back on Twitter. I had hated Twitter for so many reasons over the years because I saw so much rubbish on there. And then I just saw this whole swath of people that were like me. They were weirdos. And I was like, oh wow. How do I connect? Should I connect with these? Should I come out of the closet? So I reached out to Gigi. Gigi put me in contact with Wizard of Oz and said, yeah, you need to meet this guy. And I met Wizard of Oz and ended up speaking at a Bush Bash. And after the Bush Bash presentation, he just said, Izzy, I think you like, he hinted at me actually because he knows I move very slow on things. He was like, I got a ticket to Bit Block Boom. Well, why are you telling me that? Well, what's going on here? Yeah, I've got a hotel for these days. You should check out the flights. And then it just became this, okay, I'm going overseas with Wizard of Oz. And then we started bouncing from one place to another. And that set me off on the journey. Thankful to him for that because it saved my life in a sense, Daniel, because maybe something that we'll talk about later in the podcast, but some things had come up where I didn't know if I was going to put myself out there and what that would look like. I when I had bounced into Twitter at other points in the past, somehow I ended up seeing all these dumbass traders and all this stuff. No disrespect if you're a trader, but I don't. It's not my wheelhouse. I have nothing. It's not about money for me. And when I started meeting plebs, it felt. It actually felt like when I met Vipassana meditators, I just had this instant connection. But it was more than just the meditation. It was, as I said with Knut, it was all of us at the tip of the spear in a human revolution, an opt-out nonviolent revolution. And that's what I felt like I prepared my whole life for. And here are all these other people um, on that pathway. And I'm like, holy shit, how can I not be, how can I not just completely let go of whatever little bit is left that I'm still holding on to that I should or shouldn't be doing. And that's how it saved me because I'd been on that pathway of um, just letting go of everything. And that was the last thing of just bounce from yourself, get out of your own way and be present with these people. And since then it's been this type of connection nonstop.
And I've seen it. Well, I've not only seen it, but I've felt it as well in myself. But I've seen people like yourself that I'd never seen on Twitter before, I'd never heard of before. And this happened again this year at Riga as well with a different guy who'd been in the Bitcoin rabbit hole from, I don't know, 12, 13, 14,
Mm,
never ever met another Bitcoiner and just
yeah.
decided for whatever reason, you know what, let's go check out what's going on at one of these conferences. And then just to see like the smile or just that energy, like it's just incredible. So that's what I felt with you last year and all the time
Yeah.
now, because you bring that wherever you go. But it's what I
Yeah.
also saw with another guy this year as well. I'm thinking, man, this is so powerful because he's already started his project, and that's going to bring in the next load of people, and he's going to probably end up going on podcasts in a year's time, and bringing in even more. So it's incredible to, I guess, for those of us that are in the echo chamber the whole time, we go to these things, you might bounce around, find a few of your mates that you found on Twitter, connect, have that incredible time, go home and carry on the banter on Twitter and then look forward to the next one. But it's these edge cases that I've seen, like with yourself, that are just like, who the fuck were these guys? Like, where were they? Where did they come from? What were they thinking back in 2012, 13, when all of this, I had poo-pooed it several times. What made them, grab onto it?
I can tell you from my perspective what it was. The white paper was that just stopped me in my tracks. I said this to Knut when I remember everything. You know how your parents talk about, oh, I remember when this happened to Kennedy, or I remember when this happened, NASA, and I remember where I was sitting. I can still see my desk. I remember everything about that night, reading like reading the white paper, reading Bitcoin, a word I'd never heard before, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And peer-to-peer to me I just was like, wow, I get this. Now you hook that to a cash system. That's what I'm looking for, because I knew what the Federal Reserve was. I'd known for years. I'd been just yelling it from the rooftops to so many people in my friends circle that this is a racket, this is a game, and you're constantly propping it up with your own acquiescence. You're constantly propping it up with your own choices in life, how you use your life energy in the form of money. And so when I read that, it was just like, holy shit. But I did, after that was 2010, and I did download the client a little bit later. I did do some mining. That was super cool. Had some very interesting experiences. I was very afraid of the internet, in the sense that I knew whatever I did on it would leave a digital footprint. And I didn't have the skill set to cover that. So I was always like really reluctant to kind of be involved with things or put myself out there. And I'm glad to some extent. Um, there are some trails, definitely. Um, but a little while after that, it was probably 2011 or getting towards 2012, I found Jacques Fresco. And I found his work very fascinating because he was talking about a cashless society. I actually think Jacques Fresco would have been a Bitcoiner had he understood, but he definitely understood that fiat money was a debt slave and a trap. And so I very much resonated with that. And I went on a huge exploration with that, sort of bounced back into the Bitcoin space around mid 2012, late 2012. But you ask what it was like. For me, it was like um, you just wanted to onboard everyone. You just wanted everyone to accept Bitcoin. For me, there was no understanding of base layer and adding on different layers and things like that. You just wanted to onboard everyone. So your hairdresser, your laundromat, you wanted your friends to have it. My cannabis dealer at the time, definitely wanted him to have it. I think I probably gave him more Bitcoins than most people ever own. Sorry, I blew the mic out, but yeah, it's just the thing was to, for me at least, and the people that I could see in the space outside of the really technical people who deeply understood, it was about spreading Bitcoin as far and wide as you possibly could, and allowing that to be. It was very audacious and naive and really, really beautiful.
But you'd have been coming up against, I mean, still to this day, it's very difficult to orange pill people. Back in 10, 11, 12, it could have been like almost impossible.
Well, no one knew, Daniel. No one. There were no touch points to Bitcoin. There was probably, I mean, just in the people that I would see in Bitcoin talk forums and places like that, 7,500 people, 150 people. So there wasn't anyone that knew about Bitcoin. So when you talked about it, it was just something else. And when I tried to explain about the Federal Reserve and how this was the money of the future, nobody was interested.
Oh,
There was nothing.
that's way too conspiratorial, Izzy. And let's go
Yeah.
down that let's go down that path because you and I have had
Oh,
many
yes,
conversations.
please. Let's go down that path. It's the
Because
path I've been on for 30 years.
you and I, that's what I want to know. Like, how did you ever? What woke you up to the Federal Reserve and what they were up to? What were the touch points? There's always obviously a gut feel, but then somebody puts a book in your hand or you see some kind of documentary. What was it?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I don't want to rehash the story I told on Canute, but I had a moment where on Freedom Footprint podcast, but I had a moment where I had left medicine. I was toying in film. I was doing really good, and I just saw here I go. Here's another career opening up. That's not what I'm looking for. I just want to have fun. I just want to make movies. And I left my house one day. I was walking down the street. I was drawn into a bookstore. I was constantly buying books. I have a library of like 5,000 books. And so I really resonate with literature and books. And so I went into this bookstore and I bumped into a book rack, and this book fell down, hit me in the foot. It said, "The Most Dangerous Man Since Jesus Christ." I'm like, who's this? um, and it was about a guy named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who later was known as Osho. And in my utter stupidity, I read the book cover to cover in the books in that bookstore. It's like 70 something pages. And then I bought it. As I left, I thought, okay, I'm going to India. I want to meet this guy. I find this very fascinating. I'm drawn to see what this holds. So I went to a travel agent. I bought a ticket to India. I called my family, told them I was going, and I showed up in India. Actually met a beautiful French girl on the plane. She came up to me and said, "Hey, this is your first time in India, isn't it? Do you want to stay together?" And I'm looking up at her like, "Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, yes, I do." And through some really wonderful happenstance, I ended up meeting some people who took me to Pune. Said, "Yeah, I know the ashram that you're talking about. I would like to take you." It's a very Desi thing to do, to sort of, the foreigner is the guest is the god. You need to look after that. It's a really beautiful culture in that respect. And so they took me there, and I went to this ashram. I never forget, when I went there, there was a lady at the gates, and she asked me who I was and why I was there. And I told her, "I'm here to meet this Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh." And she laughed in my face. I was shocked. I had, like, "Why are you laughing at me?" And she went, "Well, he left the body 10 years ago, but you should stay." And I thought, okay, I'll stick around. I had a ticket for like 3.5 weeks, but I stayed for just about 2 years, just under 2 years. And to answer your question specifically, I went there not looking for a guru or anything like that. I went there because I was fascinated by this human being. The human endeavor is what fascinates me most. Um, that's why Bitcoin is utterly fascinating to me, what it's doing to humanity and the path and the trajectory that we're on. And what I gleaned from my experience there at that ashram, doing all kinds of meditations day in and day out, month after month, was drop your beliefs. Whoever you think you are, whatever you think this is, let it go. And I had made a choice in the late 90s, prior to probably around 97, that I wanted to know who I was rather than go down the traditional pathway of, I mean, I'd been to university, I'd been to med school, I had a great job. I didn't want to follow that path. I saw the ancients were saying something very different. They were saying, "No se te ipsum," know thyself. And when I looked around, it was like everyone was just playing a part, and that wasn't for me. And so that drop your beliefs really deeply, deeply resonated with me. So that was the primer. I spent probably 4 or 5 years just constantly deconstructing what I thought reality was, what I thought I was. And it just starts opening up all these questions. Well, if what I thought was true isn't true, and I can see that now in my experience, then what is true? And when you start going down that rabbit hole, at least when I did, of what is true, you find some very interesting falsehoods. And when I married that with an experience I had when I first started working, one day I realized, it was one of my first really big paychecks in medicine. It was like, holy shit, what happened to all my money? This is crazy. Like, they took all my money. But now I'm going to be, I was just taxed on that. And now when I move it in any direction, I'm going to be taxed on that as well. So no matter what direction I use this thing, they're going to take some. This is a fucking racket. So I married that with that experience, with the understanding that I didn't know why that was. And so I started exploring. Wow. When you go down, as you have, deep down the rabbit hole of money, gets dark, gets really dark.
It does, and this is a problem I've seen for people that and I spoke to Kaysen about this. If you
Love Kaysen.
Yeah. And this is why Bitcoin has saved so many people, Kaysen included, which he talked about on the podcast that we did together. He literally had the pills in his hand.
Yeah.
Shocking. Because when you do go down that route, and you did this prior to finding Bitcoin, prior to Bitcoin's release, when you see, and you cannot unsee, but there is no solution. The solution of Bitcoin is just not in
Yeah.
and will not be there for, in some people's cases, decades, right? Decades. People might have figured all of this out right in 1971 when that announcer, imagine being that person that's watching the news and just gets immediately what's going to happen to society because of Nixon rug pulling the world. Like that.
Yeah.
Very, very
Daniel, we
dark.
can even go back. We can even go back further.
Yeah.
Go back to 1913.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know this stuff as
1910,
well.
the original meeting on Jekyll Island.
Exactly. Jekyll Island. People around then, at least who were privy to this military industrial complex, which was the enforcer of the bankers, they knew, and they tried to warn us. But it gets swept under the rug. It gets labeled as conspiracy theory still to this day. That is so deeply embedded that people will look at you, a grown man, successful, had great careers, still have an amazing career, amazing family, and they'll go, wow, conspiracy theorist.
It's crazy.
That's
It
how
really is.
deep that mind virus is.
So, all right, where do you want to because I know you can go back even further. And then we get into the realms of, who are they, right? The classic the kind of Peterson. Did you watch when Gigi was on the podcast with Valis and Breedlove and Peterson, and they were trying to explain?
I didn't.
You didn't? Okay. They were trying to explain Bitcoin to Peterson, and it's brilliant. You've got to find it on YouTube because if I remember rightly, Gigi's wearing his green suit, and it's just excellent to think. Like, right here we are, three plebs. You've got like Breedlove and Valis going deep down, like one direction. Peterson trying to like scratch his head, and then Gigi in his green suit just truth bombing every now and then is just and I saw a meme of that. Somebody captured the picture and sent it around on Twitter with the memes like, "Hey mom, my friend was just on a podcast with Jordan Peterson." She's like, "Oh nice, which friend?" She's like, "Bottom right," and you look bottom right is the dude in the green suit with the glasses and that. I hope Gigi still has that one in his collection. But there was a point in that interview where the guys were trying to explain to Peterson, what happened, what went down, the formation of the Federal Reserve, and of course they kept using the words they, and Peterson interrupted. He interrupted the flow, and he said, "Yo, guys, you've got to stop with the they thing. Who are they? You've got to be definitive, because if you just keep telling me they, this big they, you come across as conspiracy theorists." And I'm like, dude, seriously?
He's
like
kind of right.
Professor, like
he's kind of right though.
He is right, but he was falling into the trap as well.
How do you mean he was falling into it? Like the whole conspiratorial. Well, I'm curious. I just want to break it down. I'm really like, I love your mind. So when you say he was falling into the trap, what does that mean?
He was kind of, you could see that the shift in his body language change, as he wasn't taking these guys as seriously as he had been for the first 30 minutes of the interview, sort of thing. You kind of felt that change. At least when you're watching it
They,
YouTube. Yeah, right. Exactly.
oh, the mysterious they.
The
Okay, so I want
mysterious
to say
they.
something about that.
Go for
I,
it.
I, I've never understood how people don't understand that there is a they, and part of me, to speak about the they, am I meant to be cautious because I'm a CEO of a company now? I can't. And I've said this to my board. I have the greatest board in the world. And I said, I can't be restrained. I've seen too much. I understand too much. I know who I am, and it is what it is. And they're like, yeah, do you, Izzy? I'm like, oh, be careful. But so if we look at they, right? How could people not understand that there are levels to this? We've all been, at least the majority of us that are our age. See how I brought you up to my age? Then the majority of us that are our age, we've been to school, we've been on the playground, right? That teaches us there are these cliques, and you can't be in that clique. Why can't you be in certain cliques? Some of them you simply don't have the status and the money. It's shown to you from the time you're 5 years old until the time you're 15 on the playground. And you don't think that is I'm not talking about you, but you don't think that is the real world. That is the real world. Now multiply that on steroids times a million, in that there are some people you cannot access. And you know this, but it surprises me that there are grown ass adults who are very intelligent that don't grok this and will look at you, Daniel, and go, oh, that's just conspiracy. Yeah, well, let me drop some evidence in your face from the past 30 years and hold my fucking beer.
All right. Let's get some evidence.
Well, I wasn't talking about you in specific. I was using it as a metaphor, but I've never, I think I've said this to a couple of people, but as Knut would say, fuck it. We're going live. Okay. The way that I understand this, it's wild because I can already hear the backlash. But I'll just preface this. I don't presume to be right because I'm intelligent enough to know that what I am is right now. I'm right here, right now. I'm going to be who I am with you. What I've grokked and what I've understood through 29 years of research is, yeah, there are Luciferian bloodlines on this planet, and they go back a very long way. They talk about this, and they've been in power a very, very long time. Um, you have levels to that, in a sense that the majority of the underlings in that pyramid cannot access the levels that they do ever. It's simply a bloodline matter. And the religion in itself, if you look at Luciferianism, it's ancient. So to think that it disappeared from the earth is utterly naive. And then when you go down that cabal and you see that a Satanism, if you will, this type of agenda, this type of belief system encompasses those upper echelons of that level, those upper echelons of that pyramid. And you can recognize it through symbology. You can recognize it through their actions. Even some people have been caught out through the past couple of 100 years. That's like being on the playground. Those are the inaccessible kids. And the majority of us are the worker bees. And the interesting thing that I find about this pyramid is we far outweigh the powers that be by magnitudes. And yet it's through our acquiescence that they maintain the type of power and status that they have. So, in a nutshell, wow, that was really refreshing to get out there. That's my understanding of things. I have had some very interesting personal experiences. Um, don't know how much of that I should talk about. I'll tell one story. So I have a friend from New York, very, very, very old, wealthy family. traces back, thousands of years. They've always been wealthy. And should I say his name? I won't say his name. I'll just call him Andy. Andy and I became close, and he was taking me to the Friars Club and all these things. And here I am, this, Kentucky boy. And he was explaining to me one night when he was kind of the black sheep of his family, and he was explaining to me when he was in a lot of pain. He was an alcoholic, but just a super super sweet guy. He was in his 30s, and he was explaining to me, Izzy, you don't understand. Like, you don't have the pressures that we have. We take, this is his words, not mine. We take care of you. We take care of the populace. Therefore, we are responsible for you. Like, the things that you have, we make. The things that you use in life, we sell to you. So we are responsible for you. And there's too many of you. You're unhygienic. I thought about that conversation for a long time. He said a lot more, but it's probably best left unsaid. And I thought about that for a long time. And you know something, Daniel, I can see his perspective. I get it. Myself, it's just some of the most evil shit I've ever come across in my life, to think that I would have rulership or ownership over anyone else, in that I could decide whether they were cold or not, irregardless if I had the biggest company in the world and I provided for everyone. My mother didn't raise me that way. My mother raised me in such a way that the beauty of life is helping people, is uplifting people. So I don't personally know how this belief system works, other than what I've been told by a few people about certain things that they do and what's happened to them as children. And then lots of years of just looking deeply, deeply, deeply into different rabbit holes of it.
Man, that is deep. Okay, yeah. So I know there's a lot of people out there that might be still shaking their head at all this kind of stuff, but there are.
I respect that.
Yeah, but I want to point them to some of the books that I've read where this comes up, where you wouldn't have expected it to have come up, and that is the Secret Education of the American, the Secret History of the American Education System by John Taylor Gatto.
John Gatto.
Yeah, and in that book there is a chapter, and I think it's named "The Seven Sisters of Runnymede," something like that. And he unpacks this whole, what you basically said. You met somebody from a very old family. He highlights some of these. He even says in the book, it's dangerous for me to even take you down this path, let alone name some of these families. But he did, from his own very, very deep research into this kind of thing. And you wouldn't expect to find that in that book. You're like, yo, this is just a book about the education system. How did we get to this idea that you've been talking about, in one of these chapters? And they go to great lengths to intermarry in these families, in these bloodlines, and they go to great lengths as well to cover their tracks. Right, their surnames are not their actual surnames; they've been assigned to them.
The friend that I was talking about, the surname, I asked him, like, Andy, why can I find you on the internet? He said, you'll never find me and my family on the internet. The internet isn't for us. And they had, like, even now I'm being careful in a sense of what, I don't want to be disrespectful because he opened up to me. I don't want him to get into trouble, in a sense. Because he was a really, really lovely, giving guy, but just that whole belief system was fucking ludicrous, man.
Well,
Like,
it comes back. It comes back to this the idea around eugenics, right? And following
100%.
following Thomas
100%.
Malthus.
Yes.
And his idea
And
that
you go down the path. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Malthus's idea or his theory that we will reach a critical mass of people on this planet, and that's when we will start depleting the planet, and we will need to cull, for want of a better word, some of the populace, because the planet can only provide for X amount of people. This is Malthus's theory
Yeah.
back in 1780, whatever it was, and
Yeah.
right, and these people that follow that, and again, it's all out in the open, right? There was a British
It's
eugenics
all there.
society, right? There was an
Yeah.
American there was a magazine. There was the
Yeah.
American Eugenics Society magazine that would go all
Yes.
around the country. Like, they hide in plain sight with this idea that you shouldn't be marrying somebody of lower stock or
Yeah.
IQ than you, or blah blah blah. They even had conferences. If you follow Laser Hoddle, he's all over this stuff. He found a conference program from like 1929. It was like the fifth annual Congress of Eugenics Society, and it had
Yeah.
the play order book of who's there, who had been invited, who was speaking. Keynes was one of the keynotes.
Yeah. Absolutely. How do you think they get into these positions? To be able to get into a position and have your viewpoints put out in that sense, to be recorded in that sense of history as we know it, which is taught to us, you have to be connected. And I'll go so far as to say it's not only about eugenics. Eugenics is one part of it, one pillar of this agenda. Um, you know, it's interesting, Daniel. Why would people think that there's not this evil darkness that a certain people worship and try to materialize and manifest through their own actions, when every single culture throughout known history talked about it? You look at the Christians, they talked about demons. You look at the Muslims, they talked about the jinn. You look at the American Indians, they talked about Watiko. So it's always been around. Why would we all of a sudden? Because we're indoctrinated, because we've been given a system that this is your past, this is who you are, this is where you come from, and you are now the height of humanity. When you can look around this world and see that, hang on, there's so much evidence that we're not. Like, how long have we been here? I don't know the answer, but um, it's a lot longer than what we've been told. And I mean, every culture talked about the deluge. I mean, I know we're jumping around from sort of different subjects here, but it's all tied together.
Yeah, I watched that Netflix. That's a good meme. Netflix documentary. Netflix
Which one?
documentary. What was the dude's name? Hancock. The
Graham Hancock?
yeah, the apocalypse.
I didn't know he had a documentary. I found him back in late 90s. Fascinating guy.
Yeah, really fascinating guy, and you'd have to check this out. This documentary, The Forgotten Apocalypse. I think that's what it was called. It's like about 6 series, but he visits ancient civilization kind of monuments around the world,
Hmm.
and just starts digging into them. And archaeologists
Hmm.
obviously hate him because
Of
you guys,
course.
he's like, you guys, like, no, like, clearly this isn't the date. Like, what are you even saying? But of course they're captured. And well, yeah, I know we're jumping around all over the place, but then, how do people get captured, and how do they get indoctrinated, and what is the tool that's being used against us here? And then let's look at the money. The money that was formed in, well, the formation of the capture of the money, the monopoly of the money, that started in 1910, as we know,
Yeah.
in Jekyll Island, in that secret meeting on
Yeah.
the secret duck hunting trip that was put together
Yeah.
by families such as Rothschild, Rockefeller, Warburg,
Warburgs.
Vanderlip,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Morgan, of course.
How many times you see those family down at the Walmart? Yeah, you
Right.
don't.
And like, and the thing is, again, for those people listening, oh, here we are all talking about conspiracy theories again. Like, this isn't even a theory. This happened. This meeting took place.
Yeah.
It went down.
Yeah.
Those people were present, or they had agents of theirs present at that meeting
Yeah.
to hash out the Federal Reserve Act. And then they went on a 3-year dog and pony show around America, propagandizing people into believing the US needed a
Yeah.
central bank, which was unconstitutional. So
Yeah.
that all happened. That's well documented, either in Creature of Jekyll Island or in The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins. Again, Gatto.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, again, Gatto even touches on this, right? So you've got those characters.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, you've got those characters and they were hiding in plain sight. Again, when they're actually doing the dog and pony show. No, and of course, it was Senator Aldrich that was pushing that. He was the U.S. Treasury. I think it said a U.S. Treasury at the time, and it was his job to get this over the line, right, at all costs. And it just so happened that he was married to a Rockefeller, I believe. But of course, the names had been changed and whatever else. It just takes, again, one Wikipedia search to figure that out. You're like, ah, okay. So, but then how did they indoctrinate us all at the same time into like, that's a cool thing? Well, you wind it back, again, Gatto, 1903, the formation of the General Education Board, because Horace Mann had been over in the late 1800s to Prussia. He'd found the Prussian schooling system. Oh shit, we need to bring this back to the US to pull everybody into line under the guise of we need unity. We need to pull all of the religions into line. We can't have all of these spats. We never want, the civil war, blah, blah, blah. Let's get everybody singing to the same song sheet, moving on the bell, learning the same thing, distracted for 8 hours a day. Voila, we've got a nice,
so
easy...
Pavlovian.
Exactly. So in 1903, the General Education Board was formed. And again, by who? And again, you can go to Wikipedia to figure this out. It takes one search. And sure enough, it's the same kind of secret clandestine meeting in a closed room hosted by John D. Rockefeller Jr. To form the General Education Board, to figure out who to put there at the top of it. So they're kind of like detached from it. And then what ethics and values they need to push down through the system onto the people that are going to be forced into this. Free education is a human right. Beautiful meme to get everybody into this compulsory kind of schooling system. It's pretty bleak when you realize all of that and how that.
It's actually, and then you look at it as, I'm sorry.
And how that's manifested. Go ahead. Yep.
It's pretty precise as well. It's worked.
Incredible.
But there's one thing that I find, it's and you look at it now. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know how deep we're going to go down to these things, but you look at the agendas that are playing out now and when they started. You want to separate someone from their sexuality. You want to have people in the West so disoriented that they identify who they are with an idea in their head.
Which is
That's
clear
so dark.
Eugenics. That is clear eugenics.
Yeah,
like, separating
100%.
someone from their sex, their body, confusing them to such a manner that they have no idea whether they're a boy or a girl.
And then the mutilation that happens around it in the medical system. So you brought up Eustace Mullins. You had mentioned to him a while back, and I went back and I watched those videos and I was like, holy crap, I remember this guy because I had watched some of them in the, I think, early 2000s. What a rebel. Like, what just an absolute rebel, constantly under attack nonstop, but just never quit. Got almost everything taken from him, never quit, just kept going and going. There's another interesting person who talks about this. If we cut to from what you were talking about And for any of you that are looking for evidence, here it is. We're giving it to you right now. Everything that has been said so far between Daniel and I is verifiable. Go check it out. Um, before I mention what I'm about to say about this guy named Aaron Rousseau, I don't know if you know who Aaron is.
No. How do you spell the
Fantastic.
surname?
Russo. So he was married to Bette Midler for a while. He made Trading Places. He made one of the best documentaries called, I think it was called Freedom to Fascism. But while you're looking it up, so for any of you that don't believe there are levels to this game, what is the one thing you're not meant to do with British royalty? Does anyone know out there in Cyberland? You're not meant to touch them. That's a huge faux pas if you're around royalty.
Hmm.
You're meant to lower your eyes, and you're also not meant to touch them as a pleb. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Check out the photo, and you can all search this. Check out the photo in modern times of one of the Rothschilds with his finger on the chest
Of King Charles. Yeah.
of the now king.
Yeah.
Tell me there aren't levels to this. Anyway, back to Aaron Russo. So Aaron has a really fascinating story in that here's another guy, super successful, made Trading Places, married to Bette Midler, had Broadway hits, just a really lovely, successful human being. Got successful enough where someone said, "Hey, Rockefeller wants to meet you." Yeah, okay, sure. Meets him, and they become friends, like good friends. And it's interesting what he said about, I think it was John Rockefeller. Maybe it was David, actually. It was David, I think. And he said, super guy, super great guy, like a really lovely, me and him used to have conversations and we'd go back and forth. And I just really enjoyed his company. But I would ask him, this is what Aaron was saying. He said, I would ask him, why do you want to do this to the people? Like, why are you doing all this dark and sinister stuff? And one thing that Aaron said that stood out to me was Mr. Rockefeller said to him, why do you care? Why do you care about them? They don't mean anything. So there, yeah, there are levels to this. So there's more evidence for anyone who looks at this as conspiratorial and wants to know who the they is. These are the people that have the power to make the decisions in the world. You look at how the WEF started, you look at how the United Nations started, and then you look at the agendas and protocols that led to the most recent pandemic. It's the same line going to the same place. And the last thing I'll say about that, if anyone questions whether the pandemic was part of this Kabbalistic agenda, tell me this: has there been any time in your life when governments, especially all over the world, have worked together in lockstep? No, that's the beginning of a one world government. That's the agenda. And part of that is to cull the population, dumb people down through all the measures that we could probably spend the next 4 hours talking about, and create sexless human beings with how many ever people are left. One of the things that I think a lot of us that are in the know of these type of things, when the Georgia Guidestones got blown up, we were kind of behind the lines going, "Oh, who blew up the Georgia Guidestones?" That was pretty fascinating. Not that I'm for vandalism, but yeah, if the do you know the Georgia Guidestones?
No, I was going to have to, stop you there and ask you what that is and what was the relevance of them?
Yeah, what was?
Yeah.
The Georgia Guidestones, you want to go down that rabbit hole because it's very fascinating. Again, in Georgia, somebody shows up and says, "Hey, we want to build this type of monument, which is very similar to a Stonehenge. And I represent a group of people that want to build this." And they built it and they wrote, I think it was in 7 or maybe it was 13, because numbers and symbolism are very important. Dates are very important to the Luciferian agenda. And they wrote on there, in different languages all the way around it, keep your population below 500 million. That was the first thing. I think it was the first thing. I'm pretty sure. Like you said, Daniel, it's in your face. That's how dumb they think people are. Or perhaps maybe that, if you have that much power, I mean, I don't want to presuppose what someone else thinks. Um, even if I think they're evil fucktard, but I don't want to presuppose of what they think. Maybe they're just so used to success and having control. And when I did put myself in Andy's position and I looked at his father, I mean, they own a considerable amount of New York City. And that's not even where their money comes from. Their money comes from, well, I shouldn't say, because it might cause links, but their money comes from somewhere else. And when I try to put myself in the position of looking at their family, yeah, you just always win. What you want ends up going through. But I wonder if we segue away from this part, like when we look at the human endeavor, there's one thing that always comes to the forefront, no matter how many times there have been tyranny, we've risen above it. So do we do that again? Is that something that happens now? Is it going to take another 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years? That's why I love Bitcoin. That's why understanding a lot of this leading up to 2010, and I saw this, I didn't understand deeply at that time that this is an orange glowing light for humanity to save itself. I just thought, wow, this usurps a monetary system that keeps us in debt slavery. Over the years, I began to glean a little bit more and understand from some people in the space as I was kind of watching from behind the curtain, so to speak, listening to people. But it was in the last 4 years that I understood this is something different. This is an orange glowing light of truth. This is an orange glowing light that teaches you. It's a mirror to show you who you are. We live in a transactional world. It begs you to ask yourself what that means and how that type of living under ultimate control destroys you.
Oh, oh man. All right. was not was not expecting the first hour and 10 minutes of we
Yeah,
got
no
deep
kidding, right?
there. And at what point, when you're in India, you said you're in India for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, the first
Like,
time I was there for about 18 months.
right. And kind of deep meditative state that you'd get yourself into. Would there be any kind of what? I've never done that. So when you go there, what's going on? What do you experience? What do you see? How do you get there? What's the what's the journey for anybody that's, look, I'm sure many people like myself have done a 10-minute of Headspace app for a month and counted your streaks and whatever else and sat there quietly on a park bench or something listening to Andy talk in your ears. Great, great, great app. Recommend anybody. But none of us have gone or sat in a cave. And I mean, were you even doing that? Were you the dude in a robe in a
That
cave?
was a great experience.
Yeah.
Well, I've done a lot of shit. When you opt out of society and you go on that path to know yourself,
Mhm.
there's a lot to unpack here, Daniel. In India, it was all about active meditations because that's what the Osho ashram was about. Active meditations, meaning, I'm paraphrasing, but what he said was Westerners don't know how to sit. They don't know how to be still. Their minds are too active. And an Indian has spent centuries being still. So Vipassana is much easier for them. Vipassana is sitting in the state of observance. That's what Gautam Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. It was a lineage that had existed a long time prior to him. What Osho felt was that Westerners don't have that ability to sit down and close their eyes and just observe what's inside, were too fidgety. So I had started Vipassana prior to going to the Osho ashram. I had set maybe 6 or 7 courses by that point. Those are the 10-day silent meditations. And I really resonated deeply with that. I loved being in silence. I loved being by myself. I loved observing what this body is, because when you start going deep down that path, you realize that's the greatest rabbit hole. Like, the Sufis used to sit across from one another, and one person would be like looking directly into the other person's eyes, and you, as the person next to me, being my partner in this meditation, would say, "Who is in? Who is in?" And you hear that constantly enough, and they would do this for years. You begin to, that sinks in, like, who is in? And it begs the question, who am I? Vipassana, which I won't go into great detail, if anyone wants to check it out, they can. That taught me that I'm not who I think I am. I'm not this. Number one, I realized everything was given to me. My beliefs were given to me. My name was given to me. My body was given to me by my parents. So what am I? And then when I went down that path of observance, and you begin to realize the body isn't even a static thing. It's constantly flux. The person who's talking to you now isn't the person who started this an hour and 14 minutes ago. Everything has changed. The world has changed. I've changed. You've changed. So there only ever is here now. And Vipassana would teach you that experience with your eyes closed. And that was really fascinating to me. Being in India, where Osho looked at these active meditations, it was about dance, it was about sex, it was about whatever you're doing, do it to the fullest. And when you come to that point of ultimate fullness in what you're doing, whether it's emotional or physical, stop. Go inside. And I found that really fascinating, doing all sorts of, from Tantra to dance, all sorts of meditations there. But that isn't even when the stuff really got weird. You mentioned about a cave, right? I
Yeah,
went and
cave.
lived in a cave a little bit. I'll tell you, can I? I don't want to hog the conversation. I want to tell you one of the craziest things I did,
Go on.
right? Because I'd gone on this path of know thyself, um, I had all this time, I had all this freedom, and I wanted to take everything down to the base level. Like, what are the things in life that are most important? Water. First was air, then water, then food, and then perhaps shelter, depending on what you needed. And so I did crazy experiments for a long time. And one of them, I called my friend, a violinist in Australia, wonderful violinist named Tamil. And I said, man, I need you to come and get me. Don't freak out, but I need you to take me to this forest. I'm going to take all my clothes off. I've got a backpack with a couple things in there, and I need you to come back and get me in 2 weeks. And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah. And I was in my 20s, and he was like, dude, you're going to get arrested. And I'm like, be that as it may. I want to be naked. I want to be in the forest, and I want to see what this is like, if I can survive and what it means. And
Where were you at this
it
point?
was pretty cool. I was in a place called the Otways in Australia. So
Okay.
if many people know what the Otways are, it's wonderful, beautiful forest. And it was experiments like that that really started separating me early days from what reality was supposed to be, or what it was supposed to mean. Because if you're naked in the fucking forest, all of a sudden you become very self-aware. You know, your ding-a-ling is out there, and it's like, is anyone actually? There was a family that saw me. I don't know what day it was. It was after a week, and I've thought about this for years, because I thought, what the fuck would these people have thought seeing this white dude completely naked running around the forest. And there was like three of them. There was a mother, a father, and a young person, maybe about 8. And I always thought, like, from that particular experience, I always thought, what the fuck did they see? Because I saw this family and I was like, wow, that's like civilization. But I always wondered what they saw. Like, who is this crazy motherfucker?
So
So that was one of the
like, so
coolest experiences,
you
actually.
your friend drives you out there, and you
Yeah,
jump out
yeah,
the
in his
car.
old white station wagon. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you jump out the car, throw your jeans and t-shirt back in the back seat, throw your backpack on, said, "Yeah, meet me back here in 2 weeks."
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was 12 days is
All
when
right.
he was to come back and meet me right back on that exact same spot.
So what
And it was,
happens that first 500 steps into the forest?
well, it's
No doubt in your
that
mind, no like, yeah, maybe not, and just, but you're fully focused. No, this is happening. This is going down.
that's a very interesting question because that's when shit gets really real. Those because it's all exciting, it's all an experiment and everything like that until the car pulls away and you start taking those first 50 meters, and then you're like, what am I going to do? And then it becomes real. Okay, let me just wander around for a bit. And the sun starts, getting closer past starts getting closer towards the horizon. And you're like, I need shelter. I need shelter near water. Wow. And then it becomes really real. So for me, the first night and that sort of next morning, kind of confronting.
Mm.
And then it becomes a matter of just getting used to using the elements that are around you, using sticks for a lot of things. And I had a knife with me as well. I fasted for a little bit of it, but I had a little bit of food with me as well. I had jerky. I had a water purifier. I had some rope. I had my knife. I had a towel. I don't know. I don't know why I brought a towel, but I just wanted a towel with me. Um, that was really fascinating. But yeah, it becomes real quickly. There
Exactly.
was
Like
another
you're naked.
experience.
You're naked in a forest in Australia, surrounded by many things that want to kill you for fun. Like, down
Yeah,
to
that
the
was awesome.
ants, down to the
That was
ants,
awesome.
the mosquitoes, the spiders,
Yeah,
the snakes.
yeah,
What other
yeah.
critters, like four-legged critters running around in there? You
Wombats.
you couldn't have slept that first night, man.
I did sleep a bit. It was kind of fascinating. I remember hearing I remember hearing this I didn't know what it was because I'd only been in Australia a couple of years at that point, and I heard it was the craziest thing. This is what it sounds like, right? I'm probably going to blow the mic out. It goes, it makes this noise like, and I remember thinking, what the fuck is that? And then there's another one over here. And that was weird to me. Like, what is that? And you hear all these sounds that you don't normally hear. I saw flying squirrels as well, which was really cool. And I saw, I guess it was an echidna as well. Um, I actually got to pat a kangaroo, which I was later told was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. But there was this mob of kangaroos going through, and this older one, I didn't know she was old at that point, but she was towards the back, and there was probably maybe 10 or 15 of them. And she stopped, and I think she was curious about me. And it is a public park, so I'm sure they would have seen humans before, but I was curious about her. And just very slowly, over maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I sort of made myself a bit closer. And I grew up in a rural area, so I've been around deer and things like that. And deer used to come to our apple orchard, but I got up close to her. She was quite curious, and I remember patting her on the hind quarter, and it was just solid as a rock. She was so stout, but her face was all scarred up. That was fascinating. My friend said, "Yeah, she probably could have ripped your dick off." I
I
was
was
like,
going to
"Oh
say you were
well,
naked as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah." It was a great
Oh,
experience, you know. Um, another one similar to that. Can I tell you another
yeah.
little story? I know we're getting off track here, but you reminded me of something. When I went back home, it was probably it was maybe a year and a half later. That experience was really profound for me because it took me back to base layer, like what are the essentials of life. And one thing I also gleaned from that is we crave connection with people, because it was all like there was so much to do and there was fun and there was exploration, but I wasn't able to share it with anyone other than that family who fucking saw me naked. But when I was back in Melbourne, near the beach in this place called St. Kilda, there was this little old lady. She was homeless and she used to wear like layers and layers of clothes. Her name was Rosie. And I would go and I would sit with Rosie and I would talk to her. And she was very wealthy. Her husband had died and she just couldn't take it anymore. She was just like, I walked out of my house and I've been on the streets ever since. My house is there. My family doesn't know where I am. And I presume she was telling the truth. I couldn't verify any of it, but she was fascinating. She was very articulate, very weathered face, always picking up cigarette butts off the ground. Very, very odd. And I wondered when I was talking with Rosie, like, what is her life like? Because I know before I talked to her that she was weird. But when I talked to her, she was awesome. She was lovely. She was humorous, witty, and intelligent. But something had happened in her life that made her step in that direction. So again, I called my friend Tamil and I called my other friend Nathaniel and I said, I'm going to be homeless and I want to see what that's like. I need you guys to watch my shit. I'm going to take my backpack, but I don't want my bank cards. I don't want anything like that. And I'm not gonna. We had phones back then. They were like great big brick Nokia type things, great big ones. And I gave him my phone. I gave him my bank card, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go be homeless. And you asked what it was like. The homeless in the city was interesting one because I left my apartment and they had this kind of going away party for me as well. I didn't have a date set on this. I just knew I was going to go and be homeless. And so I left the apartment and I remember getting around the corner and feeling for the first time like scared. It was very different than being in the forest. For some reason, even though, as you said, there were all these things that wanted to get me, I felt scared in the city. I had my clothes on. I wasn't walking around naked or anything, but I was just like, I can't go back because my friends are like, ah, ha, 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 ha. I was in my late 20s. But I thought, what am I going to do in the forest? I can sleep wherever I want. I can make a shelter. I can, do things to protect myself. But here, everyone owns something. So what am I going to do? And it started freaking me out a little bit. And I just went, Izzy, just trust, just trust. And I kid you not, I walked around that corner and right there on the footpath next to the sidewalk was a pillow and a blanket. This was like 2.5 blocks from my house. I have no idea how it got there. In Melbourne, we have this thing where people, when they're moving, they put a lot of stuff on the street for collection or whatever. And I just went, well, okay, there it is. That's how this is going to roll. Everything that I need is going to come to me. So I took that pillow and that blanket and I went and lived. Well, the first night I I holed up like in this construction site, and these people in the morning. I remember waking up to all this fucking hammering and all this stuff, and this guy looks at me, and he goes, "Did you have a good sleep, mate?" And I was like getting dressed and trying to get out of there. But I spent almost 6 weeks living on the street, living a lot of the time in the dunes down in on the beach. So beautiful. When you look up, like I preferred the light in the forest because I could see a lot more stars. In the city with the lights, I didn't see as many stars, but it was still that feeling of sleeping in the elements. And when you talk about stuff crawling on you, it doesn't really. It just I thought about that a couple of times. Is it because I'm bigger? Like why am I not getting bitten by spiders and stuff? It just didn't happen. They just left me alone. But something very interesting happened, Daniel. Again, it comes back to I remember that first day wanting to brush my teeth and going, "Where's my water?" It becomes essential. I need water. I need to live near water. Now how am I going to get my food? And I decided, okay, so go into restaurants and make a deal with people. And that's when the real learning curve started. You walk into a restaurant, you've been asleep on a dune or in a construction site all night, you're a bit mangled, you haven't had a shower because you haven't found water yet, and you're saying to someone, can I wash your dishes or do something for food? The majority of people just shun you. And I was like, wow, this is what it's like for someone in a hardship. If I was like super, if I had all these depressions and stuff, and I was in this situation, wow, those are some strong fucking people to pull it together. We look at them as trash on the street. I don't, but I'm not to say that everyone does, but the majority of people look at them as they're a nuisance. Yeah, walk in their shoes. I wouldn't say that I've walked in their shoes without the emotions. But then I ended up finding this lovely cafe, and he said, "Yeah, you can do all the gardening. Just come in here couple times each day, do the gardening. We'll feed you." So I had my water, I had my food, and I had my shelter, which was everything around me. And it was a beautiful experience. It was really lovely, but it ended. It started pouring down rain one night, and I went into a 7-Eleven and I asked them, like, "Can I have a great big box?" And they gave me this box, and I took this box to the park, and I got inside that box, and it was kind of raining, and then it started raining harder, and it was under a tree, and then this wet box collapsed on me, and I was just like, "This sucks, man." And I went into what I thought was a little building and realized it was like a bathroom. And I slept on that bathroom floor. And I remember thinking, that's it. It's over. Like, I've got $75,000 in the bank. I don't need to be doing this shit. You know what I mean? So I ended it the next day, but it was a sublime experience.
Man, that's crazy. And it's even crazier to think that like you had a full on, high flying medical career, right? This is something that we've not even touched
Yeah.
on yet. What, surgeon, like, doing surgery.
Yeah.
So yeah, how would you describe that to people that aren't familiar with? Would that have been, if you look back over your life, would that have been like your main career?
Not really. I mean, I think I was good at it. I was very good at specifically cutting and suturing, but I was a shitcoin surgeon. I was a hair transplant surgeon. So I, I had trained in various aesthetics, but I gravitated towards that. It wasn't even gravitated. It's just by happenstance what happened when I was in LA.
Hmm.
The doctors that I ended up working with and the opportunities that opened up for me, and then being invited to Australia as a medical specialist in that realm, it just became like who I was, but
Right.
it wasn't who I was.
How on
Um,
earth yeah, all right, let's go down that rabbit hole. How do you do hair transplant surgery? Like what is that process?
I don't, I don't think you need it. You've got, what is
I,
with you? Like you, Canute, everyone have like amazing hair. You're a really good looking dude as well. So is Canute. But hair transplant surgery used to be very interesting. They would take what's to try to put this in. They would take it looks like a hole punch, and if you ever saw someone from sort of pre 1990s 92 when Dr. William Rassman, who was my mentor, he developed certain techniques. Prior to that, they would take a hole punch and put it in the back of the head and twist it, and it would take out a circular bit of scalp skin all the way in subcutaneous tissue and down, and then it would heal. And these people would have like dots all over the back of their head. And the theory was you would let your hair grow, but then they just took those dots and implanted them into people's head. So a lot of the hair transplants prior to sort of early to mid 90s, it looked like doll's hair. It was quite archaic. You saw a lot of movie stars back in the day had that done and things like that. Dr. Rassman did something interesting, which was he developed a multi-blade, patented it whilst I was there with him. Really interesting guy. And you take a strip from across the back of the head. Yeah, I see your face wincing. And then they sew that area up. If you look at Joe Rogan's got that scar. It's like a smiley face across the back of his head. That's from his hair transplant. He talks about it quite a bit. There's actually a few people in the Bitcoin space who have identified their scars. I'm not going to dox them in this moment, but as a hair transplant surgeon, you can see it. But you take that strip and you send it to your technicians, and then they dissect it up. And back then, they were trying to dissect it into just one follicular, like just one follicle, and then you would painstakingly implant those follicles. That's the part that I found interesting, because I would see a number of surgeons who would just use what's called a no core needle. It's a hollow pointed needle. You would use a certain gauge and you make all these punctures, and then you implant the follicle in there, right? But that's not how hair works. Hair grows in follicular units and clumps, and it has different directions. And if you're a bad surgeon and you just start poking stuff up in people's head, it just grows really weird. And when people look at you, they're kind of like, what's going on with that guy's hair? So I gravitated more to the artistic side of it and the innovation side of it, which is probably why I left it, because I really wanted to just experience what it was like to be an artist. And I knew that even when I was when I first went out to LA after going to University of Kentucky, I knew I was going to go into film at some point. I thought it would be adjacent, but I just knew I wanted to experience what it was like to act. I think it was because my mother had wanted to be an actress at one point. But that's how you do hair transplant surgery.
Right, but what makes somebody want that?
It's interesting because you would see cases of body dysmorphia for sure. You could tell that someone would come in and they would be fixated on their hairline and how it was creeping away and what that meant, and they wanted it fixed. And some people, like almost like a rhinoplasty, you can do that particular surgery and they're happy and you'll never see them again. And other people, you can tell there's a body dysmorphia and they're going to come back. They're going to come back into plastics in some other way, and they're going to want other things done and other things done. And even though I left medicine a long time ago, I've seen that in the field more and more and more and more. You see young people, specifically in the US now, that it's just like, wow, you've gone down that rabbit hole and you have access to that. You have money for these surgeries and you've done it. And the interesting thing about a surgery is there's always a trade-off. And I would say maybe 100% of the people don't realize that. It's never going to be what you think it is. And not only that, there will be a trade-off with it. And a good surgeon will tell you that, whether it's a cardiothoracic surgeon doing, something there, or whether it's a plastic surgeon. They'll let you know that out of the gate, and hopefully they'll scare you in a sense where you'll be like, yeah, I'm not doing this.
Man, and the incentive structure in that business is when somebody walks through that door and you can pick up on those vibes, then your quid's in, right? You know, it's not your job to talk them out of it. It's not your job to say, hey, listen, you are clearly suffering some kind of psychological trauma here. You need to go and get some kind of help to address this personally before I even
Yeah.
take the next. Like, no, you're incentivized. Well, people in the industry are incentivized. Like, oh, great, we've got a cash cow's just walked into the surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one person I was training under. I'll just call him Harold. He was a very renowned plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. And when I was doing rounds there was a woman that came in. I think she'd had 5 or 6 breast implants, like 5 or 6 surgeries. Wow. And this time she was going down a size because the ones that she had put in prior were too big. It was just like, wow, you need to address what's happening inside of you. And maybe in some weird way that informed the pathway for me as well, because I was able to see things like that and I had my own experiences in that realm. And Daniel, I've really understood one thing. You know how people talk about to love someone, you have to be able to love yourself, right? And a lot of people try to focus on, oh, I have to love myself. I need to love myself. In my experience, that's not the way. Like you can't just love yourself. There's so much shit about yourself that you probably don't like. And you have to come to terms with that. And that is what the ancients would have called the dark night of the soul, when you're faced with who you are and there's parts of you that you don't like, but when you accept who you are and you fully accept who you are, it becomes a really beautiful experience. And in that beauty, love develops for the things that you actually don't like, for the quirky things or the dark things or the shameful things or the things that happened back in the past. And when that feeling of self-love happens, loving someone else is just an extension.
Hmm. Yeah. Drop the mic, Izzy. I, I
We
don't know
talked
where to
about some wild shit.
I don't know where to go after that one. But there is, yeah, so we come back to hair transplantation. I'm probably getting the timeline all a little bit fuzzy here, but at some point in there, you stumbled across niacin, which is
Oh
something
yeah.
that I've tripped up myself with having. Thank you to Michael for coming on the show. If nobody's listened to that, at Rumik, go back and find his podcast with me, because he's just a pleb, married, 4 kids, but found and used niacin to cure uh, crippling psoriasis, or eczema, whatever people want to call it, that he'd been suffering with his whole life, and had the specialists all over him, and all the allopathic kind of remedies you could ever have dreamed up. And then he
Yep.
found niacin. So I did that episode with him. He led me to Dr. Dimitri Katz, and I did an episode with him. And that led me to Abram Hoffa and the book Niacin, The Real Story. And it led me to taking it as a supplement. It's just literally vitamin B3. And sure enough, a load of plebs resonated with those
Yeah.
episodes, have picked up the book, have started taking the supplement, have had all kinds of results. We all keep track of them in a signal group, and bounce ideas off
I'm
each
in
other
that.
and
I'm
whatever
in
else.
that group.
I know you are.
I'm in there. I love that group.
It's great, right? But
Yeah.
you found this like way back in the day, and
Yeah.
yeah. Well, talk to us about that, and kind of the benefits that you've seen and felt from it, and what it is to you, and how you found it.
Yeah, sure. Before we do that, so just with you as well, because you intimated to me that you had healed something that was long withstanding,
Mm.
and
Yep.
Have
Raynaud's.
you talked about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Raynaud's
exactly.
syndrome. I used to get dead man's finger, like a complete draining of one or two digits on either hand. It would have started happening by now because we're coming into autumn, so the weather's changing. So I would go out in the morning, perhaps run the kids somewhere or something, or go for a walk, whatever. Go run some errands, and it would happen every single time. It would happen just going down to the gym. By the time I got to the gym, I'd have a completely dead finger. Doesn't happen anymore. Doesn't happen. And that I
Since you've
can,
been on the niacin
yeah,
protocol.
I can only attribute it to that. Like that's the only
Yeah.
thing I've solidly changed in my daily routine.
So Knut and I talked about the different types of sciences, and I said to Knut, I look at there's experimental science in the sense of what's verifiable externally, and there's experiential science. And Knut laughed at me. He's like, "It sounds like bro science," and I'm like, "Well,
Yeah,
um,
he
it's
loves
very
his bro
important to
science.
me." Oh fuck, he's such a good dude. He's such a good dude.
And when I say that, he hates
Um,
bro science.
yeah, yeah, but I think I got him in certain respects. But to your point about niacin, so I was on that path. I can do what I want. I don't have a career. I'm not having children at this point in my life. My whole relations are open, not in the sense of having open relationships. I've always been a very monogamous person. But I wasn't willing to commit in the sense of like, listen, I'm on this journey of know thyself, and that is going to trump anything else. I love you, but just you need to know that. And that's not what a woman wants to hear when when she wants to, have babies and all that with you. That's kind of confronting. But having that attitude of being able to do that allowed me a lot of space to experiment. And long story short, the way I came to niacin was realizing that since I had left the farm where we ate everything natural, like my grandmother made canned everything. She slaughtered hogs. Sorry if you're a vegan, it's just what it is. It's what my grandmother did. And so did I, by the way. And deer hunted, and we just had a farm life, and it was beautiful. Um, not all the time. My mother moved my sister and I to a lovely little house, and we had our own little life. But I always went back to the farm. So anyway, I had all this space, and I realized that when I went to university, when I did my undergrad, and then when I was at university, I just felt like I had a bad diet, and I had had some dental surgeries as well, and I just felt like I wonder if I have toxins in me. And when I had that thought, I was like, well, what do you do about it if you do? And it became a process of experiential science. And that was me constantly experimenting. And niacin came to me when I was walking down the street one day, and this kind of strange person came up and asked me, "Do you want to? Have you ever taken a personality test?" And I was like, "No," and I'm not really interested. And he kept hounding me and hounding me. I had been at the Theosophical Society studying Madame Blavatsky's work. And I came down, and this guy was like right at the base of the stairs. And I said, "Who are you with?" And he said, "The Church of Scientology." And I was like, "I've never heard of that." Well, I'd heard of it in LA, but I've never been like I've never had any experience with that. And I thought, okay, I'll take your test. So I filled out this paper, did the test under a different name, and then they tried to sell me all this shit. And so I wanted to research, how did this thing even start? And it took me down this rabbit hole of the guy L. Ron Hubbard, who used to be a science fiction writer. Wow, that's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. And when I started reading up on this guy and reading a lot of books about him, at one point he talked about uh, a stacking niacin protocol, and I'd never heard about it. And I recognize a lot of the stuff that this guy said about some things was actually quite spot on. The other stuff was so fucking far fetched. It was, to me, almost comical. No disrespect, if that's anyone's belief. But he talked about this detoxification program. This was like 96 or 7, of doing a like a cardiovascular exercise for 20, I think it was 25, 30 minutes, getting your blood really flowing, pumping, and then taking a lot of niacin and getting in the sauna and staying in the sauna for 4 hours. And to me, that was like, wow, this is, I want to do that. I had been meditating, so I was used to sitting in Vipassana for hours and hours at a time. So I thought, I don't know what this niacin is, but I love saunas. So I'll get in the sauna. I'll get my blood flowing. I'll get all jacked up on this, whatever this niacin is. And then it happened. It started up here
The
and the
flush.
flush happened. And I was, oh, mate, I was deep into meditation. And one of the things with Vipassana is it's all about observing sensations. And then you move around the body and observe. Well, that gave me hundreds and hundreds of millions of sensations to observe. And so I became like, this is my thing. This is what I'm going to do. I remember my friend Malro at the time saying, "You're a fucking maniac. You are just like off your, like, you need to get a job, you need to get a car, and you need to," actually, that was Shane. Shane said, "You need to get a job, get a car, and get back into medicine." I'm like, "No, I need to go to the sauna and get all and do this." And that's how I discovered niacin. It was fantastic. But I didn't take it in the way that a lot of people are taking it now, where it's daily dosages. I would do it for like a 2 week period, and then I would wait months and months and do it again.
So Stamets is now even talking about using niacin as part of his stack with psilocybin, and I can't remember whatever else. I've not even been down that rabbit hole yet, but it's just interesting that came up in an interview he was doing with Rogan. I think it's pretty old now, but he throws niacin in there as well. So
Well, Daniel, that is something else that's been hidden from the populace.
yes, niacin, I know, yeah, like by the same characters that we talked about at the beginning.
There it is.
All right, so let's just do the TLDL. Too long, didn't listen on my podcast with Dimitri Katz, because that was 4 hours.
Yeah, please.
So I will nutshell this very quickly for the listeners to reference what we're talking about right here. So he was studying at one of the top universities in the US, niacin specifically related to X. I can't remember what, but he had stumbled across behind a paywall, sitting in the dirty, dark corners of the internet. He had discovered all of this research, which was conducted back in the 40s and 50s by a dude called Willard Krehl, Krehl. You won't find that name on the internet. You will only find that name if you really do like start moving around or find some kind of published paper of his. And anyway, so Dimitri was saying all of this research was done. So who was Krehl? And like he was pulling all of this stuff out and then testing it in the lab, specifically against cancer and then against COVID when that all started coming out, right? So he starts taking his findings to his university professor, who shuts him down immediately and starts calling him crazy. Like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you straying off course? You're supposed to be testing niacin against X. You're not supposed to be touching cancer. Nobody's here to do that. And he's like, yeah, but dude, I think this will literally like obliterate cancer within people before it even gets to the stage of need. He's like, no, we're not here for that. So he gets cancelled. He has to leave the university. So he still looks into Krehl, and Krehl was, lo and behold, moved from Germany into one of the best universities in America, where he could study as much as he wanted about niacin, funded to the hilt, absolutely anything he wanted. Research was kept within those walls or for those people that funded him. And I mean, call us conspiracy theorists here, but I think we will probably know who would have been, funding that move and keeping that research.
Yeah.
So what did you feel after
see...
niacin? What have been your anecdotal? I know you are very much more on a kind of spiritual level, and you can sit there and feel it, and watch all of your synapses firing off in your own mind, and probably imagine your capillaries opening up, and ATP and cellular level kind of stuff. But did you feel any improvement in like physiology and things like that?
Well, like I said, I didn't have the protocol that you guys have now that Dr. Katz had put out, where it's a daily dosage. Um, but yes, I did. There were a few things that happened. One, you're exactly correct. I loved it for the observance because it created sensation simultaneously in a sweeping fashion all throughout. And I found that really, really fascinating. And then also, I would notice sometimes it's almost as if the niacin would stay in an area, but it would keep going through, but it would stay in a particular area. And because I'm sitting there for 2 hours, in non-moving, complete deep meditation, I was able to really observe that. And I wondered at the time, why does it stay there? Like what is that about? And I had experiences that it would stay in my neck, and I'd always had pains in my neck. And wow, this is going back a long time. Actually, I did niacin. I did those stacking protocols for probably about 10 years, maybe once or twice a year, and then left it for a long time, and then came back and have left it until now. I actually wanted to do niacin with you on this podcast. I wanted us to be glowing tomatoes, and people would be like, these fucking guys are nuts. But the pain in my neck had, it was a very interesting pain. It was a stiffness, and it didn't feel like a muscle or anything. It felt like the whole thing was inflamed. I didn't know why. I do now in hindsight, which is a whole other conversation. But it stopped. It went away. And I remember saying to my mother at the time, "Wow, all that pain is gone." And she just was like, "Here he is. He's going on another like fruitcake adventure." Um, but that was one of the things I noticed immediately. My skin was different as well. It was very, very soft. Um, Perhaps it was uh, you know, like I don't want to guess what it was. I can just tell you experientially that my partners, she would tell me like, "Wow, you have the softest skin," and I remember thinking, "Yeah, I do. It's super soft. It just feels really good." I felt mentally clearer as well. Um, I mean, how much of that was part of the meditation in niacin? I'm not sure, but that's what I felt taking the niacin during
Mm.
those stacking periods. Yeah.
Which is what is a lot of feedback in that group from people that are doing it as well. And it's interesting what you say about it. It just knows where to go. That's what Katz says. It's like the most amazing thing about niacin. It just knows where to go first. It is kind of like it does a body scan and says, right, okay, yeah, found you, and it will
Mm.
find all of that kind of trapped, contaminated blood. So in the case of Raynaud's, the way I understand it, you're going to have some valves that aren't working particularly well, and your blood can't pump through to your extremities, and that's what in cold weather, that's how it shows up. But it knows where to go, and what to do and how to fix that. And it's mind blowing that we don't have access to this uh, education, because guarantee you weren't taught about it in medical school, right? You had 4 years
Never,
of
never,
right.
never. We actually had, I think, even nutrition was a chapter of one semester,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
You're the
And I
third
remember
or
my
fourth person to
grandfather.
tell me exactly that same thing. I've had
Well,
3 or 4
yeah,
doctors tell me that it's like a one chapter in one huge book,
yeah,
and move on.
yeah, yeah. You spend more time on yeah, it's exactly correct. Anyone who's been in med school understands that that's what it is. And funnily, you go back and when you take a Hippocratic oath, it's when you yeah, it's just that's a whole other conversation. It's a fucking corrupted
Mm.
industry, but I have
Mm-hmm.
immense respect for a lot of doctors because I know a lot of doctors. I think allopathic medicine has its place. Like if you're in the street and your arm's ripped off or you have some very serious shit going on, they will save your life.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, let's go way back. Let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food.
Mm-hmm.
And niacin is something you intake. You take it through, and we look at cultures in the past. They would have copious amounts of niacin in natural form. Why? Well, we know why now because you had a podcast with the people that you had a podcast with. The first person, and then Dr. Katz. Who was
Mm-hmm.
what was the guy's name? The first one
Michael.
before Mike.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So you had the podcast with Mike and Dr. Katz, and now you have a swarm of cyber hornets experimenting with niacin.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I love it.
So I want to say one more thing about that before we segue. I don't know if we're segueing off of niacin. So I've left it for a little while because I went in a life hibernation for quite a while, and it's so apt that it would come back to me at this point and in the protocol of a daily stacking. And it's probably why I wanted to have it with you tonight on air. One, I wanted us to be bright red and burning and itching and everything else because I actually love the sensations. But the other, I wanted my first entry point back into niacin to be with the person who introduced it to the plebs, which is you through the conversations that you've had. And the reason it's relative to me, without going into a lot of detail, I'm on the final leg of a medical adventure that niacin and something else is the next step of that protocol. And it's been going for 8 years now. And I want to document the entire thing because I've documented all the other 8 years. And it's a blood cancer. So I'm very curious to see the effects of what niacin will do here.
It's a blood cancer you have or had? Or...
I thought, yeah. So, yes, but it's hard to say it's what you have because I look at cancer very, very differently, and this is a whole other rabbit hole of a conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so in I said this on Knut's podcast. In 2015, I had done back to back to back to back films. I was working on this side of the camera because I was going to make my first movie in India, possibly with I don't know if you know who Shah Rukh Khan is, but Shah Rukh had said to me, Izzy, I'd like to help you make your first film. And so I said to Shah Rukh, yeah, awesome. Let's go. Let me go back and I want to get experienced on that side of the camera because I wanted to direct my first movie in India. And then I had this, my hands were cramping up. I had all this stuff, and I'm the healthiest person that I've ever known in my life. My friends used to come to me probably because of all this wild experimentation. And I just had this like something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. So I called a colleague. Long story short, I end up seeing a specialist, and he's like, I know what's going on here. And according to him, yeah, this is a very rare terminal blood cancer, and you're going to have to, this is what's going to happen. And I took it very differently. I took it as, huh, okay, let me see where this is going to go. This is going to be an interesting adventure. Um, and it has been for 8 years. For the first five and a bit, I just, mate, I went and I called a friend of mine and I said, I need to leave society. I'm going to do some very radical shit. Um, I remember telling my friends that as well. my great friend Mark. I called my best friends together and told them, and they were shocked and all of this. And then Mark was sitting across from it. They're trying to console me, and then Mark burst into tears, and we're all looking at Mark, like consoling Mark. And he's you all right, bud? He goes, everyone's fucking got cancer. It's fucking bullshit. And we just, we end up spending an hour and a bit like consoling Mark, who was really confronted by the whole situation. But anyway, I called my friend and I said, I need to leave. I need to be somewhere where I have like no human contact for a while. I'm gonna bring all these supplies. I'm gonna experiment with a lot of shit, and I'm gonna find out what the etiology of this is. And he said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I've got some very rural properties that have some very old buildings on it. They're not really habitable, but you can do what you want. But I need to be able to come and check on you. I said, okay. We made a deal. He would come every couple of months and check on me. So I stayed out there 4 or 5 years, and until I could work out. I mean, it's a long conversation, so I'm just going to cut it short. I recreated this in my blood, and I did it 3 times, but it kept coming back. And I had a hunch of what it was. I know what it is now. I'm a little hesitant to say because I want to finish this next chapter, and it will open up a whole other wormhole of something we could go down that's been hidden, and perhaps we should save that for another podcast. But I needed to find the focal point of an infection that has been spilling into my body for a very, very long time. And I did. And then it became a process of understanding how to mitigate that constant infection. And at the same time, how to regrow tissue, how to regrow a certain couple of glands. And it was just this really interesting, cool experiment that lasted 5 and a bit years. And that took me to the point where I know now that niacin and another compound is going to play a part in this next stage of it. So I'm super excited, and I've documented everything all the way through.
Man, this is no end of surprises when you chat with Izzy. Like this is all right. Yeah. Okay. I won't keep pushing buttons there because, like you said, that's a whole different conversation. And let's get you over the line with it first, and then we can do another podcast about it. That'll be incredible.
Yeah, sure.
But before we do like sign off, you've referenced film here a couple of times. So what people might not know about you is, yeah, you were a full-on actor in Hollywood movies as well. Like, this is just another, part of your journey. Uh, Fighting with Jackie Chan and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So how does one go from pulling hair follicles out of people's heads and to replant them as a respected, well-paid, high-flying surgeon in Australia, to walking away from that into an acting career? Like, how did you even find yourself on a casting couch? Like, what on earth was that process?
How'd you know I was on a casting couch? Who you been talking to? What's going on, mate?
I think that's how it works, right? In the biz.
How does that happen? The quickest answer to that is how we formed our education system at Amber App. And let me explain that. This will roll out on Proof of Keys days, actually. I had studied Joseph Campbell for a very, very long time.
Who's that dude?
And that journey of,
Who's that dude?
Sorry?
Who's Joseph
Oh,
Campbell?
Joseph Campbell?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Joseph was, I think he was a professor at, was it St. Mary's College? It may have been St. Mary's. I'm probably not remembering. I'd studied his work after he wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I'd come across that when I was in LA, and I was at UC. I'm probably doxing myself when I was at UCLA, and in the acting world, there was a one-page document going around because I was acting whilst I was there as well. There was a document that was going around called "The Journey of the Hero," and the hero with a thousand faces, Joseph Campbell's work. Excuse me. Basically, he looked at every culture in the past, in known history, and every culture today, and found that there is a journey that we all go on, no matter who you are, male, female, or whatever you identify with now. I shouldn't say that disrespectfully. Whoever you are on this earth walking around, you're going to have a journey, and it's going to have these particular stages and steps in it. And I deeply resonated with that. That's part of that path of I'm going to exit all this crazy clown world and go on the journey of the hero to know myself, because that's what the people from the past, the ancients, like, we're not looking at the Temple of Delphi and it's saying, buy stocks or fucking grow wheat. No, it said no se te ipsum. It said know thyself. So the journey of the hero for me was know thyself. And the ability to segue out of medicine was just, I'm done. I know I'm done. That's it. It's over. That was a chapter. Same way from knowing that that last day of being homeless, that's done. I don't need to do that anymore. And going into film was, I want to express myself in that. I want to see what that's like, and I think I was very good at it. I did, much to the dismay of my agent. Man, I think I was quite narcissistic because I refused to audition a lot. And she's like, "You're a fucking actor." Yeah. And I'm like, "Yeah, no. I just want to work with certain people." And it was really audacious shit. And, but I did. Yeah. And I did some films in Australia and US and India. And I think I mentioned this to you. She put some of my films online, and being very conscious of having my name out online, I was furious. I was like, I don't want to be online. This is bullshit. I don't know what this box with colored lights has in store for me. And she was like, "You're a fucking actor. You have to be on, you have to put yourself out there." And I had enough of that. And I was like, "You're fired." And that started a new chapter of just going around the world and seeing what that held, what that looked like.
So
So it's always been,
how on earth did you end up in a film with Jackie Chan?
well, it's a cool story actually. I had this audition for a television series here, and I didn't want to do television. I went back and forth with this agent, and she said, "Just go to the." This is when she was still my agent. She said, "Just go to the audition. Just do it. It'll be good for you." And I had that I don't give a shit attitude, and I went there and I did this. I did this American jock character where I was, I was like playing like I was just dumb. And the casting agent loved it. He thought it was super funny, and the director ended up casting me for it. And I was, all of a sudden I'm gonna go on Australian TV as this dumb American, and they call me as I'm going in to sign the contract, and the director says, "I'm so sorry, we're gonna go with this guy. I think his name is Jesse Spencer. I think he ended up becoming a big actor in the US, but his name is Jesse Spencer, really good looking dude. Um, yeah, I'm so sorry, Izzy. Like, we feel horrible. We've got this role in a Jackie Chan movie. Do you want to do it?" And inside, I was like, I fucking, yeah, I want to do it. I wanted to do it a lot more than a television series. And so I got cast in this Jackie Chan film, and yeah, it was just cool. I got to play a mafia guy named Alfonso, and one of the scenes, Jackie was really approachable, like a super cool guy, actually, really laid back. His parents, I think, had a farm in Canberra, which is an area in between Sydney and Melbourne. And yeah, I got to fight him. I think out of all the 17 or maybe under 20 minutes that I filmed, I think I ended up in that film probably less than 5 minutes. But to me, it was like I was on set for 3.5, 4 weeks. And every day you're hanging out with Jackie Chan and he's there and he's approachable and you're sitting down and he's just funny. And it was just super cool, man. It was really, really cool.
What's the
Yeah.
name of the film?
It went out then with a different name, but it's called Mr. Nice Guy. It's directed by Sammo Hung. Um, as part of the Golden Harvest Productions. Yeah,
All right, plebs,
it's a really
go hunt
solid
it
crew of
down.
people.
So some people may
Oh
have
my
it
god, don't!
already, right? I think it's one of those films.
I'll tell you where I'm at. I'll tell you where to find me in there. To find me in the moment where Jackie punches me in the face 2 or 3 times and puts me in a rubbish bin and hooks that rubbish bin back to the on the back of a car, and that's the last time you see me in the film.
All right. I think it's one of those guys I've probably seen, but many years ago and don't have much memory of it. But I'm gonna go YouTube it and see what I can remember. Mate, we've been going just over 2 hours, so we should probably start wrapping it up. And as usual, we've not really spoke about Bitcoin at all, but everything that we've been talking about is related to Bitcoin. But only those of us that have been down a Bitcoin rabbit hole for any length of time understand why and how. So let's kind of wrap this up with your idea of how Bitcoin, if we bring it right back to the start of that conversation, right? You hit the conferences and then you felt this connection and how Bitcoin has this power to connect us. And we've talked about it before in person, and I know you and Canute covered it, biomagnetic nodes, and how Bitcoin is redefining the human experience. Deep, deep stuff. So probably can't capture all of that in the next 10 minutes. But what we can talk about is Amber, what's going on, where you are live, where you're hoping to launch, and the roadmap for Amber, because I think many of the plebs listening, myself included, love the fact that so much is being built behind the scenes that very few people might even have any idea of what's going on. And again, when you go to these conferences and you meet these people and you see what's being built, you get blown away. And there's so much going on. And I know you guys aren't just sitting still. You're not just resting on your laurels. So what's the plan? Where's it going?
Well, it's funny. I don't want it to turn into a shill, but I appreciate you asking that. I guess I can preface it by thanking you very much. Wizard of Oz put me on this trajectory when he asked me to buy Alex's shares. I didn't know why. I didn't know Alex had left the company. And I said no. And then through our travels, we began talking about what was then called Amber. And I just found it fascinating. Like, why did the founder leave? Like, what was going on? And he didn't go into detail. I ended up discussing that with Alex a little bit later. But he asked me after I told him, like, hey, I don't think what you guys are doing right now is the right move. I'm like, I've been in Bitcoin a long time. I think you should be focused on this. And personally, you need a leader. I wasn't putting myself there. I was just giving my opinion. And then Wizard of Oz said, I think you should run it, Izzy. Izzy, I think you should be the CEO. And we had this lovely back and forth. But the reason I wanted to thank you, so I took the helm in the start of this year pretty officially. And as I said to Lauren, it was struggling, man. It was a company that could have been closed in a month with what was happening, and it has nothing to do with previous management. It's just they went through a lot of shit in that year after Alex left. trying to find their way without sort of that outward face, and trying to understand how to market to the world. And some of the things that I said to Wizard of Oz, it's like, none of that's important, man. All you got to do is focus on the orange glowing light. And if you're a maxer, you understand what that is, and you build that. You build what you need in the world, and it becomes very simple. But the reason I wanted to thank you, and I'll say this publicly, and I won't be long winded. I know it's been like we've got 10 minutes. Um, so I've only weighed in. I've tried to be a toxic maxi with two people on Twitter, and I failed miserably both times. One was Jake Woodhouse. I said, "Ah, oh, you're big noting yourself," and it was a shitty thing to say to someone who was a friend of mine. He called me up and he said, "It's a shitty thing to say. Let's go have a beer and let's talk it through." And turns out I was wrong about something that I was thinking, and I really owe Jake credit for that because he pointed that out. Something very similar happened where you and I were talking, and I hadn't talked to Alex, but I had taken the helm in his company for a few months, and I'd heard these things like, "Oh, without Alex, oh, it's not this and it's not that," and I had formed this idea in my head, and I'd seen Alex, like he's been in the space for a number of years. I remember when Amber came out, but I judged him, and you said to me, "I think you need to talk to Alex. Just fucking have a conversation." And I respect you a lot. And I did. And the first thing I did when I had that conversation with Alex, I said, "Hey, man, before we go down any conversation, I need to apologize to you. Like, honestly, I just thought you were an asshole." And I was sitting in meditation, and I was asking, and afterwards I asked myself, why do you think this guy's an asshole? You don't even know him. Izzy, what does that say about you, you judgmental fuck? Like, what an asshole you are to think that. And I told him that because I'd weighed in on him on Twitter. I said, "Oh, this guy's a narcissist." And I thought, what kind of person am I to judge someone like that? And I told Alex that, and I'm happy to say he just opened up like a flower. And he told me of what he'd gone through in the company and why he wanted to exit to focus on things that in his personal life and what he wanted to do. He told me about the shellacking that he had taken on Twitter, which I had seen. And I just saw this person who had gone through a lot. And I found a kindred spirit in a sense. I wouldn't say that we're best mates, but we definitely said, if we're on the same continent, let's go fishing and take our lovely women with us. And I'm probably going to get flack for saying our women, but it is what it is. So anyway, I wanted to say that thank you very much for that, because he's been a superb help to me. Anything that I've ever wondered about Amber, we rebranded to Amber App. Anything that I've wondered about the history, Alex has been there. Even looking into our investor table, he's always been there. But so I wanted to start with that. I probably got 30 seconds left in the 10 minutes. Amber App is very simple, right? To me, it's an education. And I mean, the investors may not like this, but it is an education company that happens to have products and services. And no matter where you are on your Bitcoin heroes journey, I want to meet you there, because I've been on this journey a long time and I get it. There was no KYC when I first started Bitcoin. Actually, when I first started Bitcoin, there was no price. You mine Bitcoin. It was a big struggle for me for a while, thinking I'm not going to pay for Bitcoins. That's ridiculous. You mine them on your computer. But as Bitcoin goes down and it grows up, we have people that are at the KYC point. I want to help them, and I want to take them all the way along their Bitcoin heroes journey to the point of self-sovereignty. Because I don't think Bitcoin gives you sovereignty. I think it reminds you you already are. So in our company and the companies that we formed around it, the parent company, Time Chain Technologies and Amber Pay and um, Tribe Key, every single product that we've been building behind the scenes of what you're talking about is to meet someone at their map of the world. If you've never bought KYC and you will only buy peer to peer, great. Well, we're launching Sovereign Sats in 2024. You have Huddle Huddle as well. You have Peach. You have Bisq. You know, RoboSats. I just want to be able to meet people at their map of the world, because at the end of the day, and this is how I'll tie it all together. At the end of the day, what Bitcoin is exactly what humanity needs. Bitcoin. You mentioned bioelectromagnetic nodes. That's exactly right. We live in a period where we're debt slaves. The majority of the population doesn't even know what that means, perhaps, but they feel it, and they're segregated, and they feel alone, and it's hard for them. I don't see that in Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners are at the tip of the spear in this human revolution, and they're fucking excited because we know we're on the right side of history. We know we're bathed in this orange glowing light. So with Amber App, everything that we do is orange glowing light. That's it. If it's not good for Bitcoin, we're not fucking doing it. It's that simple. And coming into the company, going from that really dire straits to best month in company history, followed by best month in company history, followed by September, by far the best month in company history. And we haven't even launched global yet. Like, you got to be kidding me. I'm not trying to be audacious. It's a team effort, but our whole team focuses on, is it good for Bitcoin? Yes or no. If it's not, we're not doing it. And what's good for Bitcoin, I'll say this at the end, is to meet you wherever you are and help you. And we have the best customer service in the Southern Hemisphere, bar none. Yeah, it's verifiable. Go and look it up. I do think there are Bitcoin companies in the space. Like, I look at what Francis does, and I'm just like salivating. I just think he's such a. I remember when he had bills. I don't know when that started, way back. I remember when they were helping the street workers in Canada. It's like, I just look at what he's done, and I go, I'm coming up there where you are, buddy. And I hope that we have conversations to push one another, to help one another, because the world needs us. The world needs connection. The world needs to feel like a tribe again. And I guess the last thing I'll say, Daniel, we're at a point in human history where there's a crossroads. And I think the cypherpunks knew this. I think the extropians knew this. How that's, if you don't know what an extropian is, go down the rabbit hole of Hal Finney. They knew you could go into dystopia, because this box with colored lights is both a great power and a great tool for oppression. So you get a choice. And I think Bitcoin gives you the freedom of that choice. I know it does. I've experienced it in my life. And I just feel super blessed that I get to be in a company that gets to do that. You know, this company is going to exist a long time after myself and the people that I've put around me are here. And to us, every single day, we just go to work like giggling. Like, I mean, I work like 9,500 hours a week. Don't get me wrong. It's ridiculous. But every day I get up and do it again because I love it. Thanks for asking that question, because it's very special to me to bring Bitcoin to the world. Well, you do it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. That's what you do, literally.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I'm going to wrap it up with the final question, as always. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give that to and why?
Well, my biggest win was my mother. That was when I worked on her for 7 or 8 years, but when she got it, I was like, wow, thank you, mother. Thank you. If I had one last orange pill, who would I give it to? Has to be alive, right? The person.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know the answer to that, because I focus on everyone. And I think, look, I'm going to have to answer your question, but I think about this a lot, right? Because it's very relative to what we're doing. And humanity, as it is, feeling hopeless, which is why what Sailor brought to us, Bitcoin is hope, is so damn beautiful. Humanity feeling hopeless gravitates towards movie stars and sports stars, and they look up to them. So if you want to reach a lot of humanity in one side, you'd go, oh, who do I orange pill on that side? But then you want to look at the intelligentsia, but do the people listen? So it's a very difficult question. You know who comes to mind? Um, I don't know why. This is the second time in a couple of weeks I've thought of Mike Tyson. I probably orange pill Mike Tyson just because I'd want to be in the same fucking room with him. I think the guy's an absolute beast, and he's such a wonderful human being because he's so open and he reaches so many people. So maybe like a Henry Rollins or a Mike Tyson. I think maybe Joe Rogan's already orange pilled. He just keeps it under the rug. Um, yeah, maybe those. Maybe Mike Tyson. I don't know why I'm saying that, but because I knew you were going to ask this question, I just purposely didn't think about it.
Well, mate,
Or
that's
maybe it would be my
like
maybe
I
it'd be my
say,
sister.
there's no wrong answer, right? So it doesn't matter, but it's a fun little way to end the interview. And yeah, thanks for coming on, mate. Thanks for everything that you're doing. Thanks for stepping into the realm, you know, coming out of the closet and bringing all of that prior knowledge and well, yeah, the vast experience that you carry with you just throughout your life. And many people that have listened now to this interview have learned a lot about you, and that's just scratching the surface. So
Uh-oh.
yeah, listen to more Izzy. Get in front of Izzy and yeah, get a big hug and a beer mug and sit down and throw some questions at him because that's where the magic really happens. But thanks for coming on, mate, and I really look forward to seeing you again next time. Don't know when, don't know where, but whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, we're always connected, right?
Yeah. I felt it from the beginning when we first met at Honey Badger. Yeah, it was instant and it's only grown since then. Daniel, thank you so much for having me on. And I think I mean I don't want to talk for a bunch of people, but I think I talk for a bunch of people in this moment. What you're doing is so important and so loved. So thank you for being you and doing what you do and having me on talking about all this craziness. And yeah, I appreciate you, brother, and I love you.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, catch you next time.
All right, bye.
See you.